father of the 12 tribes. The story of Prophet Yaqub begins with a quiet strength that shaped generations long after him. He wasn't just a man. Blessed with wisdom, he was a father whose legacy echoed through 12 sons, each carrying within them a different spark of destiny. When people speak of the 12 tribes, they often imagine history, ancient maps, or distant stories. But behind those names was a home, a father, and a lifetime of lessons held together by patience, mercy, and deep faith. Yaqub raised his sons in a world where character mattered more than wealth, where family bonds had to be protected, and where every child grew with a unique temperament. Some sons were gentle, some fiery, some ambitious, some thoughtful. But Yaqub understood one truth. Leadership is not about controlling people, it's about understanding them. He observed his children closely. He saw how each one carried strength wrapped in flaws, potential hidden behind immaturity. He knew some of them struggled with jealousy, while others battled insecurity. But he didn't push them away. He guided them. He advised them. He prayed for them. And through every sunrise and sunset, he never forgot that a father's duty is not to shape his children into perfect beings, but to guide them toward righteousness, step by step. The home of Yaqub was full of noise, arguments, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection. 12 sons meant 12 different worlds inside one house. But that never intimidated him. He believed that every child deserves time, love, and understanding even when they make mistakes. Especially when they make mistakes. His strongest connection, however, was with his young son Yusuf. Not because he favored him for worldly reasons, but because he recognized a child blessed with purity, wisdom, and a special light that others couldn't yet understand. This connection would later test the entire family, shaping the destiny of nations. Yet, even in moments of difficulty, the leadership of Yaqub stood firm. He wasn't harsh. He wasn't dismissive. He wasn't a father who ruled with fear. Instead, he led with compassion and firmness, a balance that only a wise heart could maintain. Before the storms of jealousy, loss, and grief would come before the long journey toward reunion even began, Prophet Yaqub had already built the foundation: patience, trust in Allah, and a deep love for his family. A father's tender love for Yusuf. From the earliest days of Yusuf's childhood, Prophet Yaqub sensed something extraordinary in his young son. Yusuf wasn't simply intelligent, he had a calmness in his voice, a softness in his heart, and a purity that reminded Yaqub of the blessings Allah places in chosen souls. When Yusuf spoke, it felt as though wisdom had found a child's tongue. When he smiled, it felt like reassurance after a long storm. Yaqub saw all of this, and his heart naturally leaned toward him with tenderness and deep affection. But love like this wasn't blind. It wasn't about favoritism. It was a father recognizing a divine sign, spiritual fragrance around his son, that others were too young or too distracted to notice. Yaqub's love for Yusuf was built on insight, not preference. He understood that Allah places light in certain hearts, and Yusuf was one of those illuminated souls. Yusuf would sit beside his father for hours, listening to the stories of his grandfather, Isaac and his great-grandfather Abraham. The legends of Tawheed, sacrifice, and unwavering trust in Allah, while the other children would run outside. Yusuf would stay behind, soaking up every lesson, every word, as though he was storing them in a deep well inside his heart. Yaqub treasured these moments. He knew that the bond between father and son was more than affection. It was preparation. Yusuf would one day face trials unlike any of his brothers. Trials that required emotional strength and unshakable faith. Yaqub couldn't protect him from the future, but he could fill him with enough wisdom to survive it. Yet, as beautiful as this relationship was, it cast a shadow across the family. The brothers began to notice the warmth in Yaqub's eyes whenever he looked at Yusuf. They watched the way Yusuf gravitated toward him, the way he sought his father's guidance, and jealousy began to creep into their hearts. Not because Yaqub neglected them, but because Yusuf's innocence felt like a spotlight they couldn't escape. Still, Yaqub remained patient. He continued giving every child his time, his advice, his guidance, while quietly nurturing the gentle soul of the boy who carried a destiny no one could yet understand. The love between Yaqub and Yusuf wasn't ordinary. It was the beginning of a story that would test the boundaries of jealousy, reveal the depth of a father's patience, and unfold into one of the most powerful reunions in human history. Storms within the household. Life in the household of Prophet Yaqub was vibrant, loud, and full of energy. 12 sons meant 12 personalities, each one strong, each one driven, and each one competing for their place in the family. But beneath the laughter and daily work, an invisible tension was slowly tightening its grip. It wasn't caused by neglect, nor by unfair treatment. It was born from something far more human: comparison. The older sons watched Yusuf grow with a purity they couldn't understand. They saw the calmness in their father's voice whenever he spoke to him, the quiet pride in his eyes. And though Yaqub loved each child deeply, the brothers allowed their hearts to twist that love into a story that wasn't true. They told themselves that Yusuf was the favorite. They convinced themselves that their father valued Yusuf more than them. And once jealousy takes root, it begins to reshape reality. Yaqub sensed this shift not through complaints or arguments, but through silence. Fathers who observe closely always know when something is changing. He noticed how the brothers glanced at Yusuf, how their conversations paused when he entered the room. He understood the danger, yet he chose patience over confrontation. He believed that with time, love, and wisdom could soften even the hardest hearts. But jealousy rarely softens on its own. Some days, the brothers would work together in the fields, and while they laughed, the laughter felt forced. Other days, small arguments would break out, nothing serious, but enough to show that the bond between them was weakening. Yusuf, innocent and unaware, thought they were simply having a bad day. He didn't know his presence was triggering feelings they themselves didn't fully understand. What made it worse was this: Yusuf never tried to compete with them. He never sought attention. His kindness made their jealousy sharper, not weaker. In their hearts, love was turning into rivalry, and admiration was turning into resentment. Yet, through all of this, Prophet Yaqub remained the steady anchor of the house. He continued advising them, guiding them toward character, reminding them that a family only grows stronger when hearts remain clean. He knew storms were coming, but he didn't give up. He prayed more. He watched more closely. He hoped that the family he built with love would not break under the weight of misunderstanding. This tension, the silent battle between jealousy and innocence, was the beginning of a journey that would test every bond in that home. The dream that changed everything. One night, while the house rested under a sky filled with silent stars, young Yusuf experienced a dream unlike anything he had ever seen before. It wasn't a scattered vision or a blur of strange images. It was clear, powerful, and filled with a sense of purpose. When dawn touched the horizon, he hurried to his father with the excitement only a child with a secret can carry. "Father," Yusuf said softly, "I saw 11 stars, the sun and the moon, all bowing down to me." Jacob felt a shiver run through him, not of fear, but of recognition. He knew the dreams of prophets. He knew when a vision was more than imagination. This dream was a sign, a prophecy, a glimpse of Yusuf's future greatness, a future filled with divine purpose. But wisdom keeps excitement in check. Yaqub's heart swelled with pride, yet his voice remained calm as he gently placed a hand on Yusuf's shoulder. "My son," he said, "this dream is a blessing, but do not share it with your brothers. They may not understand, and what people don't understand, they often fear or resent." He wasn't hiding the truth out of favoritism, he was protecting the delicate balance of his household. He knew jealousy had already begun to grow, and he feared that such a powerful dream might ignite that jealousy into something dangerous. Yusuf nodded, trusting his father completely. He didn't question the warning. He didn't argue. He simply held the dream quietly in his heart, unaware of how deeply it would shape his destiny. Meanwhile, Yaqub spent the day in thoughtful silence. He looked at his children and wondered how a single dream could create a path that stretched from their small home to lands far beyond their imagination. He knew Yusuf was chosen for something extraordinary, but chosen ones often walk through fire before reaching the light. As the sun dipped behind the hills that evening, Yaqub watched his sons eating, talking, laughing, each one unaware of the story that had just begun. A dream had entered their lives, quietly, softly, like a whisper from the heavens. And though it remained hidden, its presence was powerful enough to change the direction of an entire nation. That night, Yaqub prayed, not for glory, not for power, but for protection, because he knew that when destiny calls a person forward, trials often come to greet them first. The seeds of jealousy take root. The dream that Yusuf quietly held in his heart did not remain hidden for long, not because he shared it, but because change has a way of revealing itself. The brothers had already sensed a special bond between Yusuf and their father, and now their curiosity sharpened into suspicion. They watched Jacob more carefully. They studied every glance, every word, every smile, and slowly they convinced themselves of something their father never intended, that Yusuf was the chosen one, and they were merely shadows beside him. It didn't start with anger, it started with questions. Why does father trust him more? How does he always stay so calm? Why does Yusuf never get scolded like we do? Jealousy doesn't strike all at once, it grows quietly, like a thorn creeping through a garden. Soon, the brothers began comparing themselves to him in everything. If Yusuf was kind, they felt overlooked. If Yusuf learned quickly, they felt inferior. If Yaqub spoke gently to him, they felt replaced. But the truth was simple. Yaqub loved each of them deeply. They just couldn't see it through the fog of their own insecurity. The breaking point came one afternoon while the brothers worked together in the fields. The sun was heavy, the work exhausting, and frustrations ran high. Someone mentioned Yusuf just his simple comment, and suddenly their hidden resentment spilled out. He thinks he can take our place. Father treats him like a prince. One day, he'll rule over us, just watch. They didn't know about the dream, yet their hearts predicted it. Their jealousy made them imagine a future that felt threatening, and fear began shaping decisions instead of wisdom. Yaqub noticed their mood darkening like storm clouds. He offered advice. He tried to bring them closer. But jealousy is a wall even the best guidance struggles to break. He warned them gently, do not let envy blind you. It destroys love, and once love is gone, nothing remains. But jealousy had already taken root. Yusuf, innocent and unaware, continued living with kindness in his eyes and trust in his heart. He had no idea that his brothers were slowly building a dangerous plan, not because they were evil, but because they let their emotions grow louder than their conscience. The family was still together under one roof, but the unity was cracking, and soon that crack would open into the test that would change their lives forever. A father's fears become reality. Prophet Yaqub had always trusted his instincts, especially when it came to his children. And lately, his instincts were troubled. He could feel a shift in the air whenever Yusuf walked into the room. Conversations paused, eyes narrowed, smiles faded too quickly. The warmth that once flowed naturally among his sons was slipping away, replaced by something sharp and unsettling. Our father doesn't need explanations. He reads what others overlook. Yaqub knew jealousy was no longer a quiet whisper. It had become a growing force inside his older sons. He saw it in their posture, their tone, even the way they spoke about Yusuf when they thought he wasn't listening. He warned them repeatedly, gently reminding them that envy destroys the heart long before it harms anyone else. But warnings can only reach those willing to hear, and the brothers were no longer listening. One morning, they came to Yaqub with an unusual enthusiasm. "Father," they said, trying to sound cheerful, "let Yusuf come with us today. We're going to the fields. He should enjoy the outdoors like we do. We'll look after him. Don't worry." Their words were sweet, but their eyes were restless. Yaqub's heart tightened. He felt danger rising like a shadow behind their smiles. He didn't know the details, but he didn't need to. Every father knows when something is wrong. "I fear that a wolf may harm him," Yaqub said, testing their reaction. Their response came too quickly to defensive. "A wolf? Father, come on. We're strong. We can protect him. Why would a wolf attack him with all of us around?" Their eagerness confirmed his suspicion. Something else was on their minds, something they weren't saying. Yusuf stood quietly beside them, trusting his brothers completely, his innocence shining like a light they couldn't handle. Yaqub looked at his beloved son, then at the brothers whose hearts were clouded by jealousy. He wanted to refuse. He wanted to protect Yusuf with everything he had. But he also knew he couldn't keep Yusuf sheltered forever. Destiny cannot be delayed, even by the love of a father. With heavy reluctance, he allowed Yusuf to go. But his heart whispered a prayer with every breath. Ya Allah, protect my son. I fear things I cannot see. As the brothers walked away with Yusuf, Yaqub watched until they disappeared over the hill. A pain settled deep in his chest, one only a father can feel. When danger comes near his child, the test had begun. The day the house fell silent, the moment Yusuf disappeared beyond the hills with his brothers, Prophet Yaqub felt an ache he could not ignore. It wasn't ordinary worry, it was the kind that sits heavy in the chest. The kind that steals peace even when the world around you is quiet. Yaqub tried to distract himself with work, with prayer, with simple tasks around the house. But his heart kept returning to one thought: something is wrong. Hours passed. The sun began its slow descent. The sky shifted into gold and then deep orange. Still, no sign of his sons. Every father knows the rhythm of his children returning home, how long it usually takes. The sound of their footsteps, the noise of their laughter as they approach. But that day, the air was too still. There was no sound on the wind, no echoes, no hint of their presence. Then, just before nightfall, Yaqub saw them in the distance, walking slower than usual, shoulders heavy, faces stiff. And the first thing he noticed was the absence. Yusuf wasn't with them. His heart dropped. Before he could speak, the brothers began their rehearsed story. "Father," they said breathlessly, "we raced each other and left Yusuf near our things. And a wolf came and attacked him. They held up Yusuf's shirt stained with false blood. They hoped the dramatic sight would convince him, would break his heart so deeply he would accept their lie without questioning it. But they never understood the depth of a father's intuition." Yaqub took the shirt, his hands trembling not from confusion, but from pain. He studied it quietly. The cloth was torn, but not the way an animal would tear. The blood was smeared, not soaked. And most importantly, he saw no trace of Yusuf's smell, the scent every parent knows about their child. The brothers waited for him to collapse, to scream, to break. But Yaqub did something unexpected, something only a man of deep faith could do. He closed his eyes, held the shirt to his chest, and whispered, "Your souls have tempted you to do something terrible, but I will remain patient, and Allah is the one whose help I seek." He didn't accuse them. He didn't fight them. He didn't humiliate them. He chose patience, Sabr, even while his heart shattered. That night, the house was silent. The laughter of 12 sons had been replaced by the echo of loss, regret, and secrets. And in the center of it all sat a father whose tears flowed quietly, whose faith remained unbroken, and whose hope refused to die. A father who never stopped believing. The night after Yusuf's disappearance was the longest night of Prophet Yaqub's, Jacob's life. The world outside his home was silent, but inside his heart, storms were raging. He sat alone, holding Yusuf's shirt, the false evidence his sons had presented, and he felt the weight of grief pressing down on him. Yet, beneath the sorrow, something powerful refused to break. His certainty that Yusuf was still alive. Yaqub knew his sons were hiding the truth. But he also knew confronting them would not bring Yusuf back. Instead, he chose the path that prophets walk, trusting Allah when the world offers no answers. His tears fell, but his faith stood tall. Days passed, then weeks, then months, and with each passing moment, Yaqub's heart didn't weaken, it grew stronger. He spoke to Allah endlessly, pouring out his pain, asking for strength, asking for patience, and asking for the protection of a child he could no longer see but never stopped feeling. Inside the home, the atmosphere had changed. The brothers thought the lie would fade with time, that their father would move on. But instead, they watched him grieve in silence, never accusing, never punishing, only praying. And that silent patience became heavier on their conscience than any argument could have. Yaqub's grief was not loud or dramatic. He didn't shout. He didn't blame. He simply withdrew into reflection, his eyes often drifting toward the horizon, hoping, believing that one day Yusuf would return. Even when others said, "You must accept this, Yusuf is gone," he responded with unwavering conviction. "Allah has placed something in my heart. He will bring him back to me." This wasn't denial. It was faith, deep rooted, unshakable faith. But grief still took its toll. Yaqub's eyes weakened, not from age, but from crying. Every night he remembered Yusuf's laughter, the way he walked, the softness in his voice. Every morning he imagined him growing older somewhere far away. He didn't know the details, but he knew one truth: Allah does not abandon the innocent. And so, Yaqub lived between pain and hope, hurt by the present, holding on to the future. His sons watched him, torn between guilt and fear, wondering how long their father's patience would last. What they didn't know was this: Yaqub's faith was already building the path for the reunion. Allah had promised in ways none of them could yet understand. Wisdom that outshined his pain. As the years passed, Prophet Yaqub didn't allow his grief to turn into bitterness. Though his heart ached every single day, his wisdom remained his strongest gift. He knew that hardship could either destroy a person or polish them into someone stronger. And he chose the second path. His sons expected him to crumble, to lose himself in sorrow. Instead, Yaqub transformed his pain into guidance. He gathered his sons, often not to accuse them, but to teach them. He reminded them that a family survives only when hearts stay sincere. He warned them about the poison of jealousy, how it blinds the mind and hardens the soul. His voice was never harsh, but firm in a way that carried the weight of truth. "Children," he would say, "a wrong decision doesn't end your life, but hiding it destroys your soul." His sons listened in silence. They couldn't bring themselves to confess, but Yaqub's words pierced through their guilt like arrows. They admired his strength, yet the shame of their secret grew heavier day by day. Yaqub also continued to guide people outside his home. Despite his personal tragedy, he remained a trusted advisor to families, to elders, to travelers seeking wisdom. People marveled at his character. How could a man suffering such loss be so patient, so composed, so generous with his kindness? Because Yaqub understood something most people forget. Pain is temporary. Faith is eternal. At night, when everyone slept, Yaqub would sit under the sky and speak to Allah. These conversations were not just prayers, they were moments of surrender. Moments when he emptied his heart to the one who could truly heal it. He didn't ask for explanations. He asked for strength. He asked for the ability to stay patient until destiny unfolded. Sometimes, his sons would wake in the middle of the night and see him sitting alone, hands raised, tears falling quietly. They would return to their beds overwhelmed with guilt, whispering to themselves, "How long can he stay this patient? How long until his heart breaks because of us?" But Yaqub's heart didn't break. It expanded. It grew stronger. His wisdom deepened. His faith reached heights that only those tested by immense trials can achieve. Even though he could not see Yusuf, he felt connected to him in a way that distance couldn't erase. A father's intuition, a prophet's trust, together they kept his hope alive. And deep inside, Yaqub believes something his sons could not yet imagine. The story wasn't over. Allah's plan was still unfolding. The dawn of reunion and the victory of patience. Years had passed. Seasons had changed. Empires rose and fell. Yet one thing in Prophet Yaqub's Jacob's heart never shifted: his unshakable belief that Yusuf was alive and that Allah would return him. Even when people whispered behind his back, calling him delusional, even when his own family begged him to move on, Yaqub stood firm. His hope was not based on emotion, it was rooted in divine certainty. Then, one day, news arrived that shook the entire household. A group of Yaqub's sons returned from Egypt with astonishing stories. They spoke of a powerful governor, wise, dignified, and strangely familiar. They described how he questioned them about their family, how he treated their youngest brother with unusual attention. And then, the moment that changed everything, the governor revealed himself. "I am Yusuf." Those words broke the years of guilt that had imprisoned the brothers' hearts. And now, they stood before Yaqub trembling, unsure how to tell him the truth he had always known. When they finally spoke, confessing everything, admitting their jealousy, their mistake, their lie, Yaqub didn't respond with anger. He didn't punish them. He didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he closed his eyes, letting relief wash over him like rain after a long drought. "All praise is for Allah," he whispered, "the one who brought the truth forward after all these years." But this moment held another miracle, one that had been unfolding quietly in the background. Yaqub's eyesight, weakened by years of tears, was restored when the shirt of Yusuf arrived, a shirt filled with the scent of mercy and reunion. The moment he placed it over his eyes, light returned to him. It was as if Allah was reminding him that patience never goes unrewarded. Soon after, Yaqub and his entire family journeyed to Egypt. Every mile felt like a step toward healing, every breath a prayer of gratitude. And when he finally saw Yusuf standing before him, grown, powerful, smiling, the years of grief dissolved in a single embrace. That reunion wasn't just a family moment. It was the victory of faith over fear, of patience over jealousy, of hope over despair. Yaqub had taught his sons many lessons, but this final chapter carried the greatest one. When life tests you, hold on to patience. When uncertainty shakes you, hold on to faith. Because Allah's plan is always greater, always wiser, and always filled with mercy, just like the story of Yaqub and Yusuf.